Welcome back. The Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, and its Constituency and Executive Projects Tracking Group, CEPTG, has uncovered a total of 219.844 billion naira from 176 ministries, departments, and agencies since 2019. According to the chairman of the commission, Adamu Aliyu, SAN, the monitoring, which spanned across 26 states, including the Federal Capital Territory, focused on critical sectors including agriculture, education, healthcare, and infrastructure.
The chairman of the commission highlighted the results, stating that 1,721 government-funded projects were monitored during the Phase 6 tracking cycle, and that the commission is looking into some of the breaches that were found. If you recall, in June 2023, the ICPC uncovered National Assembly members' uncompleted constituency projects worth over 45 billion naira. September 2022, the ICPC discovered that 13.59 trillion naira 2021 budget was padded by various ministries, departments, and agencies with duplicated projects worth 300 billion naira. And despite all of this, the country is in debt, and most projects are still not completed. This morning, we have public affairs analyst Dayo Akintobi joining us in the studio. Good morning, and
good morning to you.
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Not really shocking. I don't think anybody, hears these types of stories this morning and, their jaws on the floor. What might only vary is the disparity in the numbers we're talking about: 219 billion, 300 billion, 45 billion. But where exactly do you think is the major problem here? Is it with the allocation funds? Is it with lack of auditing, or where exactly?
Well, the ICPC talks about transparency, accountability, and issues of fighting corruption by tracking projects that are government funded. Now, these projects over time have both been constituency projects and projects by the executive. And in its remit, its enabling law, the ICPC is meant to track public sector corruption to make sure that government monies that are allocated to certain projects are used as intended. And over the years, they set up a committee to track these projects. And by tracking them, what they mean is they actually go to the sites to see if the projects are being implemented. They look at the amount of money that was budgeted to see if it makes any sense to reality in terms of whether the value was inflated. They track the projects to make sure that they are making progress and they're not just phantom projects. Yes. And this report they've come out with basically says in the last 5 years of tracking about 1,700 projects, they found lapses here and there. Lapses that include things like abandoned projects, projects that have been overinflated in cost, projects that have been awarded to cronies and family members of the sponsoring legislators. Yes. This is in terms of the constituency process. So they've come out with a pretty damning report that shows that corruption is still very, very much alive in Nigeria, and it is a hydra-headed monster that really needs to be contended with.
I mean, this is not the first time that the ICPC has released a report like this that is damning. Having followed up with 1,721 projects and seen all of this, I mean, if I look at you've summarized a lot of what the explanations are, but we're seeing here underperformed projects, shoddily executed projects, abandoned projects, certification of projects as completed when such projects have not been completed, and hoarding of projects such as empowerment projects meant to be distributed to beneficiaries. So, seeing as this isn't the first time that we're seeing this, what are your hopes that there would be any action taken as a result of these damning reports? Looking back at all the other reports that they've released in previous times and the trajectory of how things run here in our country, do you have any hope that there will be actions taken as a result of this report?
Well, the new head of the ICPC is making all the right noises and seems to want to revitalize the agency. Historically, in the last 2 or 3 administrations, the ICPC has been described as a toothless bulldog. It barks more than it bites, and generally it seems to be playing to the gallery when it releases all these reports because there's no follow-up. We've not heard of anybody being prosecuted. We've not heard of anybody being jailed. We've not really heard of any punishment. They just come up and they say, oh, we've identified this lapse here, we've identified this money. They seem to relish more in the role of being a funds recovery agent
Like
whereby
phones announcing.
Funds announcing. Yeah, they like to beat their chest a lot about the fact that, oh, we've identified this and we've recovered this much for the government. We've driven these contractors back to site from abandoned projects. But those don't serve as a deterrent, which goes to answer your question, Oliver, that how do we discourage this type of behavior, especially in public sector administration, where it's money that should go to enhance the betterment of the average or the struggling Nigerian. Most of these, especially constituency projects, are designed to improve the lot of the Nigerians that are most vulnerable, especially in rural areas. You see things like bore wells, you see things like transformers, you see water reclamation projects, things that the everyday Nigerian needs for a better quality of life, and to find that the money is now diverted or is under spent, is less than what should be spent, it diminishes the essence of governance. And so we'd like to see the ICPC, which really is kind of like the orphan stepchild to its sister agency, the EFCC, who gets a lot more accolades and a lot more public recognition. So I think the new chairman of the ICPC recognizes the fact that the ICPC has been underperforming and is underwhelmed in the perception of the public, and he's trying to change that perception. He's talking to the media a lot more. He's holding more training sessions for his cadets, and he's organizing programs to make the ICPC more effective. So perhaps in the coming months and years, we'll see the IPC being more productive.
Yeah, I mean, but it basically underscores the fact that when we claim to be fighting corruption, we're deceiving ourselves. When the Nigerian government claims to be fighting corruption, it's all just a masquerade dance that achieves absolutely nothing. But we're going to come back to this. We want to follow up on petrol scarcity conversations and see what's going on in Delta State this morning. Austin Azu is live on ground. Good morning, Austin.
Yeah, good morning.
All right. Tell us, what the situation is where you're currently located.
I'm currently in Asaba. I'm standing on the Benin Onitsha Expressway here in Asaba. Behind me is a filling station dispensing here to motorists. However, the queue is not as long as any other places. But from what we can see from here, it means the PMS is readily available and there are no queue here in this filling station. But yesterday during our survey, we went around Asaba to find out as well. The same thing that we are seeing here, it's the same thing we saw yesterday. So there's not much scarcity Asaba at the moment. However, most of them are still selling above the pump price. Some are selling 690, while some are selling almost 700. Depends on the filling station you are able to get your fuel. But from the moment at this point in time, we have very limited persons here who want to get their fare. So you can see from yourself behind this on the screen that the queue is quite small compared to other places in Nigeria where you have a long queue of vehicles trying to get fare.
Yeah.
All right, Austin, also just to double check, I know you mentioned something concerning the price. Do you have a range of what it costs in the filling stations? I don't think we got that very clearly. At the filling stations as well as in the black market, what's the price range looking like?
Yeah, the price we are looking at is between the range of 695. Some are dispensing at 685, while some are dispensing at 700. It depends on the filling station. Well, at the moment, at the black markets now, we're in Asaba, for instance, the black markets are not readily visible around the state cap, within the
because
state
there are no
capital,
queues, right?
Except, sorry?
I said because there aren't queues, right?
Yes.
All
there are
right.
no queue.
Okay.
Oh, good
Have you
news.
spoken to any, just quickly, have you spoken to any of the motorists, to get their views on how they are dealing with, buying petrol at 690?
Yes, yesterday we spoke to some of them and they actually expressed displeasure about some of the situations at hand. It's really unfortunate that some of these motorists, some of them who have earlier, converted their vehicle to gas, but right now they are converting back to the PMS. So they said that the gas is quite expensive for them to get, so they are now coming back to the petrol. But this point in time that there are already rumors that PMS has increased in other places. There are some of these filling stations have started taking advantage of that. So what they do is that you halt the fear and wait a period of time before they will sell. So we don't know what will be the next situation in Asaba and environs because of what the fillers most of these filling stations are getting across the country.
All right. Austin, thanks a lot for sharing with us. We hope that, of course, things remain calm over there. We'll speak with you again pretty soon.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a nice day.
We're still, of course, having a conversation this morning with public affairs analyst Dayo Akintobi. And, of course, it is on the ICPC's recovery of 219 billion naira, which it had tracked from different ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government in the last couple of years. I did, of course, mention earlier that, it seems like we're not really fighting corruption. We, of course, make one arrest Bobrisky here, chase people for abusing the naira, and eventually realize absolutely nothing. And this really is a time to x-ray what exactly goes on in the Federal Capital Territory, with people walking around with contract documents, seeking contracts here and there from friends, family members, senators and their cousins, and not just in the FCT, across all these states in the Federation. And, people using catering business companies to do contracts in road repairs and, and the likes. And this exactly goes on across the whole country, as long as you know one person or the other in government. The NDDC, if you remember, just before Ponde fainted during the summons, there were different reports about the hundreds of billions of naira that have gone through the NDDC unaccounted for. So I want your thoughts on this self-deceit every government comes in with with the fight against corruption.
Well, you don't have to look too far, really. Let's just look at the ICPC report. It says that over 5 years of tracking projects, constituency projects, executive projects, they have viewed 219 billion naira worth of projects. Well, on an annual basis, the House of Representatives and the Senate combined have 195 billion naira worth of constituency projects allocated to them. Remember that fight recently in the Senate where I think it was Ningi was talking about 500 million in projects is allocated to the ranking members of the Senate and so on. Total for the Senate is 90 billion every year in the budget. Total for House of Representatives is 100 billion. So in 1 year, there's 190 billion worth of constituency projects allocated to the National Assembly. In 5 years, ICPC has managed to view 219 billion worth. That's just slightly over 1 year's worth of allocation to the National Assembly members. Out of that 219 billion, it says it has recovered about 600 odd million in cash and assets, and 30 billion of contractors have been sent back to site. It's a pittance, it's a joke if you look at the numbers. That 665 million out of 219 billion is less than half of 1%. So how are we seriously fighting corruption? The numbers don't show a commitment. The numbers don't show a concerted effort to wrestle this monster.
Actually, let's even, according to the report by, I think, the cable, let's bring it that it's not that 600. I think you're even merging cash and assets recovery.
Yes, I said so. I said cash and assets.
Because cash alone is 163 million, 163 million out of 290.
Which makes it even worse, makes the point all the more poignantly that this is not really a wholehearted effort at fighting this. It's just playing to the gallery and making it look like we're doing something. So perhaps we're working hard, but we're not working efficiently because there's no real political will to fight this thing. We're just making a show of the fact that we're trying to do something about it. So what's the way forward? Well, for one thing, I don't think the ICPC is independent enough. I think because its budget is dependent on the approval of the very people that it's investigating. Those who do its budget and approve its allocation are the very people it's trying to bring to book. So, of course, it has that natural fear that if it persecutes or prosecutes
it
these
will come
people,
back to bite them.
it will come back to
and
bite
that's something
them.
that we see not just with the ICPC, we see that in several sectors. Yesterday we were talking about the judiciary and how there have been clamors for the powers that have the administrative powers of the CGN to be separated, to sort of give people, reduce the powers that he has. There's also been the conversation about the role that the executive has to play in appointing of judges. So how do you expect that they will be completely independent in their judgments if they are influenced in a way by the executive? So now that's a great suggestion, but do we even see this happening? This fight against corruption has become so deeply ingrained in our systems. It's in the little things, in people saying, oh, I'll give you 10% of my project if you can move my file up. You know, little things we see here and there. Will we ever get to the point where it will not be a fight that is so brazen, like a fight that is so, I mean, I feel like we feel sort of defeated right now. Is that a position that you see?
Institutional corruption derives from individual corruption. And I think you alluded to that. I'll give you 10% to move my file up. I'll pay the policeman 100 naira to look the other way when my car papers are not complete. So we ourselves fuel corruption on an individual level, which then escalates to institutional levels. Because remember, those who are actively practicing corruption in the public sector, they are from they're our people, they are us. So, you know, you look in the mirror and you see ourselves. And so until we ourselves reorient our thinking and our values, I think our value system is completely warped. Yeah. And I don't think we can flush out corruption institutionally if we don't begin to address it from the individual level. It's that simple.
All right, we need to move to other things, you know, and just to mention, you know, that I'm also aware, I've heard rather, that there's people who live in the FCT and their business in the FCT is really just establishing fake companies with which to divert funds. You know, that's what they do. You know, if you ask them, you know, for how do you make your money, you know, they'll tell you in secret that all you need to do is have a company, you know, a fake company that can chest 500 million or a billion naira.
It's not just even here in Lagos.
Even here in Lagos, you know, you have a company that, you know, can take 500 million naira contract, that kind of thing, and, you know, they pass it through your account, you give them their percentage, you hold your percentage, you know, somebody takes the bulk of the money, everybody goes home happy. But, I mean, let's talk a little bit more about petrol and other issues. The IPMAN, of course, you know, is in the news again this morning due to unpaid bridging claims of 200 billion naira. The Independent Petroleum Market Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, has announced its decision to halt the supply of petrol. Petrol prices have skyrocketed as a result of the present statewide gasoline shortage, reaching as high as 610 to 800 naira at pump stations and between 1,000 naira and 1,200 naira in the black market.
In a statement released on Tuesday, the 30th of April, Mazi Oliver Okolo, the unit chairman and spokesperson of IPMAN's Aba Depot, expressed his satisfaction, or his dissatisfaction, I beg your pardon, with the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission's NMDPRA failure to settle the debt. IPMAN says that no action has been done in the response to directions from Heineken Lokobiri, the Petroleum Minister Oil, pushing the Commission to clear the 200 billion naira debt. As a result, IPMAN decided to take extreme actions. So it feels like every other day we're having a fuel scarcity. This year alone, I want to believe we've had at least one fuel scarcity every month. So Nigerians are living in a state of trauma. We all have jerry cans in our boots of our vehicles, knowing that every opportunity you have to stock up because any minute it can be fuel scarcity. What's your take on, you know, the constant fuel scarcity and the recent threat of IPMAN to shut down?
Well, when the new administration came in, and of course the whole brouhaha about the fuel subsidy removal, the perception at that time was that at least the fuel would be available. It would be expensive, but it would be available. And we as Nigerians were resilient people, were willing and happy to live with that as long as the fuel was available. So now you have a double negative. It's expensive and you can't find it. That's a big problem because at that point, Nigerians are no longer tolerant. It's one thing for it to be expensive and readily available in as much as it drives inflation and all the other aspects of our lives, but as long as we have it to buy, we're willing and ready to deal with the hardship. But when it's expensive and you can't find it, on my way to the studio this morning, I'm passing queues that are 4 and 5 miles long, a couple of hundred cars in each queue, and some stations are not even selling. So I understand the arguments back and forth and the technicalities and the methodologies and the funding and the bridging loan has not been paid. Nigerians don't want to hear excuses. It's a little bit too much already. And we're at a point, we're almost at breaking point. Like you said, this is about the 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th episode or instance of scarcity this year alone. And it's got to the point where when you compound that with all of the other issues we are contending with, it's really unbearable. So as far as we're concerned as Nigerian citizens, we want the government to find a way out to this problem. We've been told that the fastest and most straightforward way to resolve this issue is to get the refineries up and running. That's what we've been told from a layman's perspective, somebody who is not an oil and gas expert. Common sense tells me that if Warri, Kaduna, and Port Harcourt refineries are functional, we will have fuel, it'll be readily available, and it'll be affordable. So whatever it is, whatever bugbear it is that's stopping those refineries from running and churning out fuel, whether it's an issue of selling them off, whether it's privatizing them, whether it's sabotage, we don't care. All we know is if those refineries, in addition to the Dangote refinery, if they're producing at optimum capacity, this problem would disappear overnight. So that's what we want government to focus on. How do we get this done?
So do you think it is intentional, that they have maybe just left the refineries, in the state that they are?
I did mention
had repeated
sabotage.
promises.
I did mention sabotage. Yeah, remember just before the outgone administration went,
Yes.
it swore that I think was it Warri would be up and running,
yes.
and they even did a commissioning, although they called it mechanical commissioning
Yes.
at that point. And we were asking, what's mechanical? They turned the lights on, they cut ribbon, they said it was good to go. Till today, not one drop of fuel has come out of that refinery. So there is some propaganda, there is some being economical with the truth about what the situation is on the part of the administration. But what we know is that the refineries are not producing. Some people have alleged sabotage. They say, the diesel suppliers, the generator suppliers, the parts suppliers don't want us to ever have proper fuel and all the other things that give us energy because their businesses will be negatively impacted. So the coercive apparatus of government has the wherewithal, if it has the political will,
Yes.
to investigate and bring and arrest, bring to submission whatever forces could be conspiring to stop the average Nigerian man from being able to enjoy a good quality of life, which begins with the ability to buy fuel, get electricity, and all those other elements that sustain a good quality of life. If we start with electricity and petrol, and we get those two right, whatever administration does that will write its name in the hearts of Nigerians
I agree.
into perpetuity.
I agree. Just, do you have any faith, from your perspective, in what we currently have in government, federal, state, everywhere, but mostly federal?
In its ability to do what? To deliver the dividends
on anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
Well,
To improve on the quality of life of the average Nigerian in the next 4 years, to give us something.
well, as a journalist, I try to be not partisan, so I'm not looking from a party perspective. But if we look at from 1999 to 2024 and the different governments that have administered and led this country, each one has had its highs and its lows. Each one has tried to put its best foot forward and do what in its own wisdom is best for the people of Nigeria. I don't believe that any government has come in that is entirely malevolent and is coming in with the view of enhancing itself and diminishing the average Nigerian. I think each one has a good motive, but implementation sometimes can be less than what is desired. So the present...
So that's a fair argument, right? It may not be my intention in the next 4 or 8 years is to diminish quality of life of Nigerians,
Absolutely.
but it can still be achieved.
Of course.
If you are, running government, almost the same way the Buhari administration was run. Nigerians would argue that the quality of life between 2014 and 2023 is a complete far cry from what they would ever have imagined, to experience. And so maybe that's not what they came in with. That's not our plan. But of course, we mismanage everything. We put the wrong people in power. We didn't sack people when they failed. We continue to misuse our budget. We continue to take loans. So what I'm asking about this one now is we have another 4 years, maybe 8. Does it seem, that they already have put things, or they have an idea of the things that will be done? Do you see 2027 as a year that Nigerians would say, okay, well, we seem to be on the right path.
A good barometer to determine how a government is doing is by asking yourself, am I better off today? Which is what you alluded to. Am I better off today than I was 4 years ago? And I want to put it to you that since 1999, that percentile has been reducing precipitously.
Yes.
Such that where we were in 1999, in 2003 we were worse off, 2007 we were even worse off. So I think with each incremental period of democracy, our lives are not improving. Whether that will now change with this administration, I sincerely doubt. Why? Because it's the same players, it's the same playbook, it's the same value system, it's the same approach to governance. So I don't see any radical U-turn or radical renaissance that we will wake up one day tomorrow and our lives, this Nigeria will suddenly be a land of milk and honey. I think that there has to be a complete restructuring. I hate to use that word in this concept, in this context, but when I say restructuring, what I mean is down to even the Constitution, down to our political system, there are questions to be asked. We need to interrogate issues. Is a presidential system better for us than, say, perhaps a parliamentary? Do we need a regional system? Do we need to devolve powers from the center to the subnationals? There are very many questions to ask in terms of what it would take to begin to really have a government that will satisfy the needs and the desires
and very valid questions
of all
that you've
Nigerians.
raised. But I don't see that a number of these people are interested in those kind of questions.
Not at all.
You know, I don't see that happening. But Nigerians can only hope for the best.
Absolutely.
That's what we will hope for. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure and honor are all mine.
All right.